If you haven't already watched the YouTube video, What is Church? You may want to do that since it will help you make sense of this video. Or even better, you can read the paper, What is Church? That was attached to your email and is also on bctulsa.com. If you have watched the video, read their paper, then watch on. We're sensing change afoot in the way we do church. Nothing spectacular, but enough that we feel the need to pull all of us together to chat about it. And the picture of church that's described in that What is Church video and paper has provoked some questions for us. That the first of which is, how do we ensure that everyone at BC has a gospel foundation, especially in light of how transient our culture is? One of our advisors, Dave Jewett, has suggested we consider that we probably have about 5 years with each person that comes through our doors. And if that's true, well, what do we want to leave them with? Another question is, how do we live out a discipleship culture in the context of the church as a family? We know it requires life-on-life relationships that go way deeper than a Sunday morning meeting can provide, but what models of doing church would serve that need best? Another tough question is, how do we live a lifestyle of mission, where engaging with our neighbors, co-workers, and our whole sphere of influence is the norm and leads to the expansion of the church like it did in the book of Acts? And finally, what would it look like if God were calling us to be a hub, resource kind of church to a network of churches? So here's a way forward that's occurred to us. What if, like the church at Antioch in the book of Acts, we put the fivefold ministry graces at the center of the leadership of Believers Church? And interestingly, we've sort of already done this in the grace clusters. Essentially, they, in a rough way, represent the five graces. What if we looked at the grace clusters and the various ministries they represent like this? We looked at them as a fivefold equipping resource center that served a network of house churches throughout the city of Tulsa. And then the relationship between the fivefold resource center and the house churches might be a reciprocal relationship in that the fivefold resource team trains leaders and launches groups. And it also serves as an ongoing support to the house churches. So, for example, maybe the Sozo team in the Resource Center could help with inner healing needs that a house church couldn't handle, or maybe the benevolence ministry in the Resource Center could cover a need that exceeded what a house church could deal with. And then we could foster these life-on-life discipleship relationships, sort of like this. We could form D groups from within the house churches. The biggest obstacle I've encountered in forming D groups is getting guys to meet guys that they trust. And a house church is a much better environment to develop friendships than what happens now, which is guys call me and come to my office so I can try and pair them with a stranger. So the three connection points for each person in Believers Church could be something like this. It could be Sunday service, which would involve everybody in the community. Then the house church, where the bulk of the life-on-life discipleship of the community takes place. And then D groups, where the life-on-life discipleship journey is intensified and focused. So how do we go about this? Well, one of the things we know we have to address is leadership. The New Testament model leads us to believe that something like the leadership team would function in the fivefold space, that elders would lead house churches, and that deacons would perhaps lead resource ministries or other projects related to serving the house churches. Now here's where our current reality is. D groups do exist, but they aren't necessarily connected with any particular group. Some of our existing life groups are led by elders. The rest of our life groups are led by rock stars, for sure. And some of our elders are serving in leadership spots with the Resource Hub. And we don't really have officially any deacon posts. So how do we move to a place where we have a fivefold resource hub led by something like the leadership team? We have house churches led by elder leaders, and we have D groups formed out of house churches. Well, what this brings us to is these questions. The first one is with this whole fivefold resource center idea. Do we have adequate leadership for it right now? Should the leadership team expand? For example, should it become a combination maybe of paid and volunteer folks? For the house churches, how are they different from what we're currently doing? And if so, what kind of leadership is required? Is it elders, or at least folks that are at that level of investment and responsibility in the church community? And then what kind of training is required for those leaders? Another question is with D groups, how do we revitalize these and connect them to house churches? And what kind of leadership training would be needed to revitalize them? Another question would be, where do deacons fit? They sure do seem to be a needed biblical leadership role. Are they perhaps leaders of ministries that fit within the fivefold resource center? And finally, how does this change occur? When? In what order? So that's what we want to discuss with you. Thanks for watching the video. I'm really looking forward to see you on Wednesday night, July 29th.